Imagine a kingdom teetering on the edge of chaos, where royal blood meant both power and peril, and sisterly bonds were forged not with love, but through fire, fear, and fury. This is not just the story of queens, but of daughters caught in the crosswinds of their father's monstrous ambition. What if I told you that one sister was raised to rule, the other was raised to serve, and yet history flipped the script in the most unexpected way? Let's travel back to the stormy days of Tudor England, where behind every crown was a trail of betrayal, heartbreak, and rivalry like no other. History rarely offers a family so tangled in glory and ruin as the Tudors. At its center stood Henry VIII. More than a king, he was a force of nature, a man who defied the Catholic Church, shattered England's religious identity, and rewrote the laws of marriage and succession, not for his country, but for his personal obsession, a son to secure his legacy. Out of this storm of ambition and upheaval came three extraordinary children, each a symbol of their father's hunger for control. Mary, the firstborn, arrived in a golden age, daughter of Queen Catherine of Aragon, a royal of Spanish blood and fierce Catholic conviction. Mary was pampered, groomed to rule, and believed herself the rightful heir to a powerful and united Christendom. Then came Elizabeth, a child born of controversy and fire. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, had captivated the king but was executed barely 3 years into the marriage. Elizabeth carried the shadow of that scandal all her life. Brilliant, cautious, and molded by the sharp edges of court politics, she would become the unexpected icon of Protestant England. And finally, the long-awaited son, Edward VI, born to Jane Seymour, the queen who gave Henry his one true prize. A boy swaddled in privilege, elevated from birth, yet frail in health and ruled more by regents than by his own hand. These three were not just royal children, they were walking legacies of ambition, betrayal, and broken alliances. To the world, they were Tudor heirs, but within palace walls, they were pawns set on a collision course that would reshape the kingdom. In the game of crowns, even siblings could become strangers. Once hailed as England's pearl, young Mary Tudor was the embodiment of royal promise. Her childhood sparkled with privilege. She dined at glittering courts, spoke fluent Latin, and absorbed the finest education Europe could offer. Her mother, Queen Catherine of Aragon, made sure of it. Mary was not just raised to be a princess, she was raised to rule. But the rise of Anne Boleyn changed everything. Anne wasn't just Henry's new obsession, she was the storm that swept away Mary's world. When Henry declared his marriage to Catherine invalid, it wasn't merely a political shift, it was a personal earthquake. The daughter of a queen became, in the eyes of the king, the bastard of a forgotten union. Mary lost her title, her place at court, and most painfully, access to her mother. Henry's cruelty took the form of emotional warfare, refusing Mary any contact with Catherine unless she acknowledged Anne as queen and herself as illegitimate. She refused, again and again, even as her mother's health failed. When Catherine of Aragon died in January 1536, Henry's spite cut even deeper. He forbade Mary from attending the funeral. While the court celebrated Catherine's death in garish displays, Mary mourned in silence, abandoned and dishonored. But out of this humiliation, something unyielding took root. Mary's sense of faith and justice became armor. The pain did not break her, it carved her into someone new. The girl who had once curtsied as England's darling would rise again, not with a smile, but with fire in her heart and a crown in her sights. Just when the world thought Anne Boleyn had secured her triumph, the Tudor court proved once again that power was never safe. In a dizzying downfall, Anne was accused of the gravest sins: adultery, incest, treason. Whether guilty or framed, it mattered little. Her execution in 1536 was swift, and her once celebrated reign ended with the sword. In her place came Jane Seymour, quiet and obedient, everything Anne was not. But Jane did what no other queen had. She bore Henry the son he so desperately craved. Edward, the long-awaited heir, arrived in a blaze of joy and national relief. For Mary and Elizabeth, the birth of their half-brother reshaped their futures. With a male heir in place, their threat to the line of succession diminished, for now. Though still branded illegitimate, they found a fragile calm in their shared uncertainty. They knew better than to trust courtly favor and instead leaned into education, self-preservation, and cautious diplomacy. It was a cold peace, but peace nonetheless. yet the court remained a dangerous place. Jane Seymour died shortly after Edward's birth, and 3 more wives would come and go before Henry's final breath. When the king died in 1547, he left behind a divided realm and a 9-year-old boy king, too young to wield true power. Edward VI's throne was quickly seized by Protestant regents determined to remake England's soul. Under their guidance, religion became a weapon, and Mary, staunchly Catholic, stood once more on a battlefield, not of swords, but of sermons. Her opponent this time was not a foreign power or a rival noble. It was her own flesh and blood, the little brother now crowned king. In a kingdom torn between old faith and new order, Mary Tudor stood like a relic from another age, unyielding, devout, and prepared to fight for her soul's truth. Her brother Edward, though just a boy, had been shaped by zealous reformers. To him, Mary's Catholic masses weren't just personal. They were acts of rebellion. Their clashes were not quiet. They unfolded in front of courtiers and ambassadors, loud, emotional, unforgettable. On one bitter Christmas Eve, the court watched in stunned silence as the king and his sister shouted across the great hall, tears streaming down both faces. One cried for the ancient traditions of Rome, the other wept for a future free of what he saw as idolatry. It was religion turned personal, and family turned political, but time was not on Edward's side. As illness consumed him, his vision of a Protestant England stood on the edge of collapse. In desperation, he did the unthinkable. He bypassed the daughters of Henry VIII and named Lady Jane Grey, his cousin devoutly Protestant and barely 16, as his successor. This last gamble would unravel in spectacular fashion. They underestimated Mary. No longer the broken girl exiled from court, she rose with fire in her eyes and loyalty at her back. While Jane was declared queen in a hushed and hesitant ceremony, Mary was rallying noble houses and commoners alike. Within days, the tide turned. London, unmoved by Jane's proclamation, erupted in celebration at Mary's approach. What had once been seen as stubbornness was now seen as strength. Mary, against all odds, claimed her father's throne, not as an illegitimate daughter, but as England's rightful queen. Her faith had not wavered, and now neither would her rule. Mary was crowned in a spectacular Catholic ceremony, making her intentions clear. England would return to Rome. For her, faith was not politics, it was destiny. But in her quest to purify the nation, she unleashed one of the darkest chapters in English history. Nearly 300 Protestants, men, women, even children, were burned at the stake during her short reign. To Mary, these executions weren't cruel, they were necessary. A true believer of her time, she feared the souls of England would be lost if heresy was allowed to fester. But if religion consumed her mind, love tormented her heart. Her marriage to Philip of Spain, meant to revive the glory of Catholic rule, was a cold, tragic mismatch. England feared becoming a Spanish puppet, and when Mary believed she was pregnant, the nation braced for a Catholic heir. But it was a cruel trick of nature, a phantom pregnancy, likely caused by illness. The disappointment shattered Mary and confirmed her isolation. As Mary clung to fading hope and phantom dreams of an heir, Elizabeth quietly returned to the chessboard of power. Her every move was shadowed by suspicion. The failed Wyatt rebellion, aimed at dethroning Mary and placing Elizabeth on the throne, was a deadly stain. Though Elizabeth denied involvement, the mere whisper of conspiracy was enough to brand her dangerous. Dragged to the Tower of London, Elizabeth entered the same cold stone chambers where her mother, Anne Boleyn, had awaited execution. The walls echoed with history and threat. At any moment, her story could have ended in blood. Mary's council even drafted the order for Elizabeth's execution. Legend says Mary's pen hovered above the paper before she paused, perhaps out of conscience or fear of plunging England into further chaos. Elizabeth survived, but she was a prisoner in more ways than one. Watched, restricted, never trusted. Meanwhile, Mary's hopes unraveled. Her longed-for child never came. Her husband, Philip of Spain, distanced himself and returned to the continent, leaving her isolated and unloved. England, once promised a Catholic revival, was now spiritually adrift. Mary's enemies grew bolder and her supporters fewer. By 1558, her health failed, her dreams were dust, and the people's loyalty shifted. Courtiers began visiting Elizabeth at Hatfield, aligning with the rising sun. On November 17th, Mary died, broken in body and spirit. Her reign, marked by unshakable faith and unrelenting fire, ended as history sealed her name, Bloody Mary. With Mary's death, the crown passed to Elizabeth, not in rebellion, but in quiet inevitability. At just 25, she ascended the throne not with revolution, but with readiness. The nation held its breath. Could the daughter of a disgraced queen truly lead? She did more than lead. She redefined monarchy, but Elizabeth never ruled in a vacuum. Her reign, long and glorious though it became, was built on the uneasy foundations her sister left behind. Mary had shown that a woman could wear the crown with authority. She passed laws asserting a queen's power as equal to a king's. She set the precedent for female rule and bore the consequences. Mary's reforms in finance, her early naval investments, her fight to centralize power, these became tools Elizabeth used with far greater success. Where Mary ruled with iron faith, Elizabeth ruled with silvered words. Where Mary alienated, Elizabeth enchanted. But both sisters, for all their differences, shared the same fire. They inherited their father's ambition, their mother's intelligence, and a kingdom that doubted a woman's right to rule. And yet, they ruled. One will be remembered with fear, the other with admiration, but both, without question, earned their place in the legacy of England. History often favors the victor. But look closer, and you'll see that the story of Mary and Elizabeth is not just about who reigned longer or died more beloved. It's about survival in a world built for men. It's about two women, shaped by trauma, sharpened by betrayal, who rose to power in an age that tried to silence them. And in doing so, they didn't just leave a legacy, they changed the very fabric of monarchy itself.